Today's topic is critters. So if you have a short-term rental here in the mountain areas, you can plan on experiencing some wildlife. Some of that wildlife is friendly and cute. Some of that wildlife can be annoying or possibly even dangerous. So I recently attended a local realtors meeting, and we had a speaker from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Alex Schaefer, and I'm going to put his contact information in the notes here. But he basically specializes in dealing with unwanted wildlife on different properties. He has a particular focus. It's more about wildlife with agricultural impact, but he spans a great deal of responsibilities and provides some valuable insights into what can be done to mitigate issues. And just, I think it's important to recognize that we do live in a mountainous area with certain wild pests from time to time. Now here at my property, we operate Airbnb as a separate part of our house. We've had a great experience doing that, and we've had many guests appreciate the opportunity to see primarily deer roaming the property. I think at one point I counted 18 deer on our property at one time. Just going to share a few of the photos and video here of some of the deer that we've experienced. We've also had smaller critters, also sometimes quite cute, show up on our surveillance cameras on the property. And we have had a few bear encounters. Bears typically are not dangerous. They are just annoying. They're looking for food. And one place to find food is your trash can. We've had bears go through our trash. We went to a bear-proof can. And what I recommend for most investors who are going to be remotely managing, or even if they're using a local manager, is to utilize a bear-proof dumpster. So our local sanitation company, Emadco, rents these out, and then they will come and pick up the dumpster and dump it when your cleaner notifies you that the dumpster is full. So that is by far the best solution for most owners. It's relatively painless, and it deals with the bears in a very humane and effective way. But again, bear sightings are not too common, but they do happen. We also hear coyotes from time to time. Don't see a lot of coyotes on our property, but they are out there. And even an occasional mountain lion, but again, much less common. Just something to consider. So I want you to be aware and enjoy this talk by Alex at our realtors meeting. And he goes into a great deal of detail about some of the issues that come up and the process for dealing with them. And again, you'll be able to contact him if you have any questions. So appreciate that and enjoy the video.
I'm a pretty obscure person in this county as far as what I do. And even though in my agency, which is the USDA Wildlife Services, we've had a presence in Madera County for many decades, probably going back to the 1960s. But at the same time, it's amazing how many people don't know that our service is available to the citizens of Madera County. Now, there's a bit of a caveat with that. I'm employed through the Madera County Agricultural Commissioner's Office. So that being said, again, USDA, Wildlife Services, Ag Commissioner Office, it's more of a, you could say, an agricultural thread in terms of what I do, which we're talking about a wildlife specialist, technician, if you will. It's wildlife damage mitigation in the conflict space with people, pets, livestock, property damage, so on. The trapper in Adair County, it's just one of those things. But a lot of times people will think I work for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game as most people know them as. That is also not totally accurate. We are allied agencies with them. I do work with the local unit biologists and the fish and game wardens, as people also call them. We do come together at times to deal with certain conflict situations, mostly with regard to certain species that require certain permits for mitigation purposes. So mitigation, conflict resolution, direct control, it kind of can be a mixture of intervention to the point of capture removal of animals, or simply just technical assistance, which would be either over the phone or in person, on-site visits at people's properties to address whatever problems that they're having. And so that could be common buzzword or words that gets thrown around a lot today is non-lethal deterrence, non-lethal mitigation, coexistence, if you will, of wildlife. So it depends on what the problem is, the severity of it, the personal values that somebody might have. If they say raise any sort of agri-resource, animals or crops or otherwise, some people have very strong viewpoints when it comes to dealing with wildlife conflict and damage situations. Personal values definitely play into it. And it can be very sensitive for some people, depending on what the situation is. So myself, I go with whatever direction that somebody is inclined to go. They do have some flexibility in terms of what we pursue, what we don't pursue. And in that space, again, that's more of a deterrence, mitigation, coexistence, or direct control, capture, removal. And that's typically lethal removal, it's not relocation. Though I'm a federal employee, we do have to follow all California Department of Fish and Wildlife game code regulations, of which we're talking about capturing and removing nuisance wildlife, if you will. Cannot relocate. That's mostly due to risk of disease transmission, even among local populations of wildlife. So let's say if you captured let's say a gray fox that was killing chickens, and you want to go move it 10 miles somewhere else in the county. Not far, but just out of your backyard or wherever you are. The concern is you have a sick animal that you move to another area and it then spreads that. So that's the main impetus for why they do not want relocation done. Now, CDFW, they have the authority to do, and they do that in certain cases with certain species. But myself, it's either no capture, and we deal with it in other ways, or we're capturing, I do have to euthanize animals, and so it's not, again, that's where the sensitivity comes into it. People, depending on where they fall on that end of the spectrum, it can we address that. So as far as like the critters I deal with, it's everything all the way down to, in certain cases, raccoons, skunks, possums, all the way up to black bears, mountain lions, feral swine, coyotes, bobcats. Now that being said, on the smaller end of the spectrum of critters, again, an agricultural threat. So there's a lot of times where people might have a problem with, say, I got a raccoon in my attic, or I got a skunk under my porch. It's not ag related, it's just its own category of nuisance interaction. And so again, being employed through the Agricultural Commissioner's Office, they prefer it has some type of ag element. So if we're talking about your smaller meso predators, raccoons, skunks, they're, again, causing damage to garden resource or to chickens or something like that. That's enough that I can intervene with those. But I'd say on the daily, my bread and butter is typically coyotes. That's what I get most of my calls for. At certain times of year, feral swine, brooding damage, which usually picks up in the winter when it's green and the ground is soft and easy brooding for them. And also in the summer, the bear calls pick up, and then every once in a while you'll get your one-off mountain lion calls or bobcats, or sometimes things that are not really, there's no damage, there's no conflict, it's just people calling to report a sighting or to report something that they feel is worth calling somebody about. And in that case, it's a technical assistance sort of thing, which is just addressing their concerns and offering little tidbits of knowledge that are pertinent to their situation. And that being said, as I mentioned earlier, we've had presence in the county for decades. And I partly attribute this to just the nature of things in the state, where people are moving from the Bay Area, from Southern California, from all different places. And so there's generationally going to be an influx of new people that are new to foothill living, mountain living, what have you. And though I do outreach like this and I pass out business cards and word of mouth is still a powerful thing with what I do, it's amazing how people don't realize that there is a service available from anything from just a phone call conversation all the way up to direct control operations if you have a situation taking place. So reporting by the public if they have a problem is oftentimes a big hurdle. I can say pretty confidently that there is a lot of stuff that goes on, even just here locally, with wildlife conflict and people losing pets and livestock and damage of all kinds, that I never hear about. I probably only hear about maybe 50%, if that, of what actually happens that will get into trouble with pets. So this sort of thing can affect anybody conceivably. On the bear front, we have more and more cases of bears entering into occupied homes and other dwellings, causing damage in that way. Though that's not ag-related, that goes into the almost public safety element of things, which as an agent with my agency, we do address human health and safety. Usually if it's going to be something like that, if it's serious, we are working in tandem with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife or the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff actually does have the authority to declare a human health and safety instance as far as a wildlife situation goes. So if a mountain lion is in close proximity to people displaying habituated behavior, if a bear is doing the same and CDFW does not want to take action or removal of the animal, the sheriff does have the authority to make that declaration and go around CDFW, which has been known to happen and actually has been increasing in recent years due to certain policies that CDFW, their leadership out of Sacramento, has been issuing statewide, which is it's a whole other can of worms, but that's caused a lot of tension between people on the ground having problems and not being able to get certain permits or a certain resolution as quickly as they once were able to, per Fish and Game Code. There's a lot of nuance in this. It's people, it's animals, it's politics, it's social culture, social values. It's a lot of different things moving in tandem. I will say here in Sierra Nevada counties, if you will, Madera, Mariposa, Fresno, on up to the north and to the south, generally speaking, people, I'd say, are split 50-50 as far as if they have a problem, what they might want done as far as, it's talking like actual damage here, something fairly serious, as far as removal of the animal or wanting to try deterrence first. And if that fails, then moving toward capture removal. So it's as the agent working on behalf of the county, for the citizens of Madera, I play it how people want to go. I can give my best advice as far as what I think might be appropriate, what can be done to try and mitigate problems, or if somebody wants to go the route of direct control, how to best approach that. And that can depend on the property I'm on, all the different variables as far as neighbors, optics, visibility, pets that may be around. There's a lot of things I just take into consideration, and it comes pretty quickly when you look at a piece of ground and you're tasked with maybe trying to capture an animal and thinking, okay, this method would not work here, but we could try this. So that's my decision to make usually, and most people are leave me to it as that entity that can make that judgment call. But just with a show of hands, how many of you have had wildlife issues or have livestock pets and have trouble? Okay, so this is something that, granted, this is mostly realtor folks and contractors, if you will, but these sorts of things, especially up here in Oakhurst and the other foothill communities, it can touch home to everybody at some point. And Karina is an example of that for sure. I could go on and on, but I can open it up to whatever your experiences have been with issues, or if you have any particular questions or comments about what this is, human-wildlife conflict. I'd be more than happy to field questions and such.
We have got a bear in our neighborhood, and it's around. It left a nice big pile of trash on our steps today.
That wasn't ours.
It wasn't ours, so we took it from somewhere else. So I don't even know. But my wife's concern often is we have some dogs, and she's worked the bear, got the dogs, and I've had lots of experience. We're from Yosemite actually, and in the valley, they're everywhere. So it's not, I don't know about bears, but the only contact I've ever had with them, they're very non-aggressive. And we actually had, our daughter was out in our front yard a few years ago, and our little dog, 10-pound dog, chased a big bear out of our yard. I mean, it ran, it was like, and the thing took off. And so I've always, in my head, thought they're not really interested in attacking dogs. And is that not true? Do they get dogs?
It's case by case. I would say most often when bears injure or kill dogs, it's because the dogs were attempting to
Come after the bear?
work after the bear. And the bear is, you could say, it's defensive, but
But they're not like coyotes that they're gonna eat the dog or something. They're not like that.
bears will eat almost anything, really. I'd say it's most often in these type of situations less predatory, more defensive, and bears are just obviously so powerful that they could easily kill a dog.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't
I understand the power of the bear, but I've just never,
Your dog wasn't a threat.
my dog wasn't a threat, but I've just never seen a bear, like a mountain lion. If there was a mountain lion around, I'd be like, don't let the dogs, because I could see that thing coming down and just grabbing one. And it's not like our dogs are outside, but we let them outside when we're there.
Yeah. So yeah, to your point, I would say generally speaking, especially up here, I think it's safe to say whether we're talking about coyotes or black bears, the fact of the matter is a lot of the wildlife, not just here in this community, but throughout the entire state, where humans and wildlife overlap in a big way. A lot of the wildlife, their behavior has become habituated to be sensitized to human stimuli, human presence, human odor, human everything. To the point where I hear all the time, people go outside, there's a bear on their driveway, they try and run it off, they let the dogs out, and they go after the bear, and the bear just doesn't even care. And it's just common. They've lived their whole life in that sort of setting from the time they were cubs, and they've never had a real negative experience with a human or even dogs, and they just got nothing to fear, really. And it trends in that when you have habituated animals like black bears, oftentimes that behavior will increase in terms of its severity of habituation. And when you start getting to the point where you have bears that are breaking into occupied homes, even unoccupied, just going through windows, going through doors, what have you, to get obviously to the kitchen area, to the food that they can smell inside, or into a shed where people store whatever, something that might be attracting. That's usually the golden threshold of a bear that, all right, this is now a pretty serious issue, beyond just a bear getting in the garbage.
Actually, after that, we have an adult male black bear, and I can tell the difference between him and the female that's around our house. But he likes to let himself into our garage and then pull the freezer drawer open. And then the next freezer drawer open, and we've actually found a frozen pie in our driveway before, and we're like, where did this frozen pie come from? So in our security cameras, we've watched him go in, let himself in our garage, pull the freezer drawer open, steal the pie, go back out, and it was frozen. He's like, man, this is too much work. So he left, went to our trash trailer, which was locked, but he like got up in there and was like, what's in there? And then there's been a couple other times where one of their cubs came up to my dad while he was working on his truck in bright daylight. And my dad's like under the truck going, Bandit, our cat, Bandit, go away, quit sniffing my leg. He turns around and the bear is literally this far from him, and they both look at each other. So the bear backs away slowly, and my dad was like, and I'm done with working on the truck today. So I think
It's all too common. Here locally, Bass Lake is ground zero for habituated bears. Now, that being said, just since we're talking about bears, I want to talk about a policy that CDFW released several years ago regarding nuisance bears, problem bears. So just to give you some historical background, in the past, prior to 2022, if somebody had a bear that broke into a home, broke into a shed, got into a chicken coop, caused damage to that effect, a property owner would be legally entitled to receiving a depredation permit from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. That permit, it's by choice, they don't have to receive one if they don't want to, but that permit would allow them to work with me if they so chose to act as their agent on behalf of the permit to attempt to trap and remove the bear. That's simple. Now, the policy shift took place where, and this is statewide, this wasn't just locally here, the policy shift moved toward non-lethal deterrence first. A property owner taking it upon themselves, even if they have confirmed damage, to implement whatever feasible non-lethal deterrents are possible for them. And if the bear continues to cause a problem and circumvents whatever those efforts were, instead of working with me, they would be in touch with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, usually the unit biologist who here locally, his name is Tim Croker, he works in Madera and Mariposa counties. He would then work to get approval to come out to attempt to trap and relocate the bear. As I said before, I can't relocate. Relocation of most wildlife typically isn't a sound practice biologically speaking. The CDFW being the lead on all things wildlife in the state, you could say they can make up the rules as they go. They have that power, state government. And so what they've been doing since 2023 here locally is capturing bears that I traditionally would have dealt with, collaring them with GPS collars, ear tagging them, and moving them usually up into the national forest, still locally. They're not moving them very far, probably no more than 20 miles. And if we're talking about an adult bear that's established at the time where it was first captured, I mean, it's not trying to reinvent the wheel, but relocation of problem bears has been tried for many years, going back decades and decades. So most of these bears, they come back to the site where they were captured within days to a week or two, just depending on where and how far they're moved. And so we got a lot more collared bears here locally, from North Fork Bass Lake up to Ahwahnee and Fresno County, Mariposa County, and that's all throughout the state. That's not just here. Just in our little chunk of the Sierras right here, that's what we're seeing. It's, I think, on their side, CDFW, it's more about data collection at this point as far as collaring these nuisance bears. They move them, they come back, they continue to cause issues, doing the same thing that they were doing. Again, keeping in mind they're already very habituated at the time when they were first captured. And they're monitoring them, saying, okay, what are their movement patterns locally? Where are they spending most of their time? So on and so forth. Is it a resolution to the problem? Let's say the bear's breaking into homes. No. At the end of the day, there's only a few ways to try and deal with that. Yes?
So what would be the consequences if you did shoot a bear that was collared or not collared?
So I'm glad you asked that, because so despite the policy change by CDFW, legally, a property owner can, if they have the means to safely do this, and this isn't the most extreme case, the fact that I have to coach people on this, how to properly and safely shoot a bear in their living room, is because I can't do anything without a permit. It's crazy these days. But basically, if there's only two circumstances under which a property owner without any kind of permit, without reporting anything at the time of the incident, could take lethal force against a bear. And that is, say if one was in your house and you confronted it, you're fearing for your safety of you or your family. You can take lethal action on the bear. Let's say on the outside of your home, you caught a bear in the act of attacking your chickens or your sheep or your goats, livestock. You could take lethal force. And it has to be reported after the fact. I forget what the hour designation is. It might be within 48 hours or something to that effect. Report it to CDFW. An Fish and Wildlife officer would come out. You'd want to leave everything as it is, not move anything. Except maybe the bear, if it's dead inside your home, you can drag it out. And then they're going to take a statement from you, and if it all checks out and it's legit, you're fine. No charges will be pressed. Now that's very different than you see a bear on your property and you arbitrarily shoot it. That does not cover that. And that also does not cover, because this is another big problem too, bears breaking into cars. Though that is an easy way to put a pretty nasty bill on your plate for repair to your vehicle, to upholstery, to whatever it may be. If a bear gets trapped inside your car, it'll ruin your day pretty quickly, that's for sure. You could not take lethal force on a bear breaking or causing damage to basically inanimate property. That's the easiest way to put it. It's just property, inanimate. You can't take a bear in the act, even if you're watching it break into your car. Human health and safety, pets and livestock, in the act, you can. In terms of call volume and just area to cover. But basically my range, as I said, the whole county, but generally from from Fireball area all the way up to essentially where most human civilization ends at Bass Lake and Fork. You could say Fish Camp, that's Mariposa County, but right on the county line there.
Yeah.
I'd say the majority of my work, the majority of my calls are actually here in the foothills, from Raymond down to Friant, O'Neill's, up to Coarsegold, Oakhurst, Ahwahnee, North Fork. And of course some work in the far west end of the county where it's all just ag. So up here is the bulk of the diverse human-wildlife conflict in terms of species. Never can tell what kind of call might come in on any particular day. But again, as I said, the biggest thing is reporting, calling it in. Karina lost some sheep earlier this year to a suspected mountain lion.
6 in one night.
Wow.
But since 2000
Socially, they stir up the biggest emotions of people. Them and black bears, the most charismatic megafauna that we have, can get very heated in terms of the diverging viewpoints. But when it comes to them killing livestock, ultimately, the peanut gallery's opinion doesn't matter. It's the property owner what kind of course of action they want to take. In your case, we might have been able to, we had fresh kills that the lion was feeding on. We could have gotten you a permit, could have attempted to haze the animal. In your area where you live, I probably could have hazed it with my hounds. We had probably the ground to do, and then dealt with husbandry of the sheep. And if you continue to lose again, if you wanted, you could have gotten a probably legal permit. I've been able to get several lions here in recent years in Madera County after we jump through the hoops and play the game. But it can be done.
now we might have to do it with a bear.
Yeah.
You're just feeding all the wildlife, aren't you?
Lost like 400,000 acres of our forest.
To be honest with you, no. And that's a whole other can of worms. We're talking about right here on the periphery of the fire.
Wide open and stuff. That's the only time we have bear problems in our neighborhood is when there's piles of trash at like the Airbnbs and stuff. It just makes it so much easier for them to get a free meal.
Sure.
So they're coming in, but they also used to chase with dogs, which I
Yeah.
would have thought when they were hunting that would have made them more scared of dogs. So barking in a neighborhood they wouldn't come as maybe close into if they were hunting them with dogs.
That's a big point of debate, and I would venture guess to say that back before the use of dogs was made illegal through SB 1221 in the state legislature in 2012, went into effect in 2013. That sort of pressure on bears statewide during the hunting season absolutely couldn't have hurt anything as far as trying to provide aversive conditioning to our bear population. When that stopped, it could only have gone one direction as far as bears. We're now several generations of bears, obviously, 12 years later, that have never faced that kind of pressure. And dogs, humans, there very likely could be a correlation. I'm not going to say it's everything to explain the increase in issues, but I think it plays in somewhere.
If they're not scared of anything and there's easy food to get to, I would think that would make it easier for them just to come down into the neighborhoods.
Yeah, and the education campaign about people being wise with their food attractants and their garbage in mountain communities, not just here in California, but all through the country, it's been going on forever. That's nothing new as far as living wisely in bear country. But it's amazing how, even in 2025, the way I see it, that's going to be a never-ending battle. No matter how much education is out there about how to deal with your garbage, how to mitigate access to food attractants by bears, there's just always going to be the vacation, tourism, the rentals. There's going to be people that just don't know, don't care to know, are only here for 2 days and then back to the Bay Area, back to LA. And it's just, that's just a vicious cycle. And not to sound pessimistic, but we've come a long way over the years. That education knowledge is more at the forefront than ever. But is it ever going to be to the point where we have zero bear garbage problems? I don't think so. I just don't see it that way. But just keep up the good fight of education for bear attractant mitigation. That's all you can do, really.